Hi, I'm Benjamin Payne. At the K-12 Education office at Hillsdale College, we support school founding groups and their efforts to start classical schools across the country. Finding the right leader is one of the first and most important steps to building a successful school. While we do consider experience in education, we seek candidates who exhibit unwavering personal integrity, honesty, courage, and servant-hearted leadership. Perhaps that's you. If you're looking to engage in fulfilling, impactful, and challenging work protecting our nation's future and building up the next generation of virtuous citizens, we'd love to hear from you. I'm looking for strong school leaders right now. Learn more about how you can make a difference at hillsdale.edu/leader. hillsdale.edu/LEADER. That's hillsdale.edu/leader.
Welcome to the Hillsdale College K-12 Classical Education Podcast, bringing you insight into classical education and its unique emphasis on human virtue and moral character, responsible citizenship, content-rich curricula, and teacher-led classrooms. Now your host, Scot Bertram.
Thanks for listening. The Hillsdale College K-12 Classical Education Podcast is part of the Hillsdale College Podcast Network. More episodes at podcast.hillsdale.edu or wherever you get your audio. You also can find more information on topics and ideas discussed on this show at our website, k12.hillsdale.edu. Thanks for listening. We're joined today by Bryce Horswell. He's a teacher support lead for Hillsdale College K-12 Education Office. Bryce, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you, Scott. It's a pleasure to be here.
Talking today about a classical summer and supporting history instruction. So why is parent involvement and support of history instruction over the summer so important?
Yeah, those things are really important. Parents are in a prime position to model that learning, which unfortunately in a school, because a school is a place of requirements and processes and rules. Now, those things are all important, but for the student, their experience of that can be learning is something that I'm required to do. Mm-hmm. And parents have the opportunity to take that learning and model that learning can be something that is done for the enjoyment of it. And that's something that we often talk about in classical education, that we want to pursue something not necessarily because of a reward that follows it, whether that's a grade or recognition, but we want to pursue something because we're actually interested in that thing and we want to enjoy it. Parents have the opportunity to model that, and that's really exciting. History, I think, is a great way to show that love of learning because it's so very accessible. History is the story of people and places, and those things have a kind of natural curiosity around them that people of all ages, even very young ones, they want to connect with that. So history is very easy to do. It's not anything that takes a great deal of expertise. So if there's an intimidation about modeling learning, that sounds like something that requires a great deal of planning and effort. It really doesn't have to be that at all. It can actually be very simple. Introducing your children to books or maybe places that are local and available to you. Sometimes that's all that it takes.
Yeah.
I'll say specifically to the subject of history, a reason why the study of history is important and why parents should engage on that with their children is that in that encounter with the past, you are going to learn about and your children are going to learn about many great and important things, important people, acts of bravery, of heroism, things to imitate, things that are aspirational. Alongside of that, they're going to learn about reverses, things that didn't go so well, maybe even to the level of some failures and regrets. The point of that is that through the encounters with those sorts of things, children learn about themselves and their place in time. And with that reflection comes a kind of humility and then hopefully maturity. And what could be more natural for a parent than to lead their child along a process of reflection, wonder, and then through that over a period of time, a kind of maturation. So it's just a really cool thing to do.
And I'd say, at least in personal experience with history, unlike science, the science is all around us, mathematics, maybe literature. There's that possibility of sort of tripping over historical references, whether it be a street sign or a statue or something. Sure. And that really makes my kids come along. Like, we know that guy. We learned about that guy.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's neat.
Yep.
What are some questions for parents to consider as they approach supporting history instruction over the summer?
Sure. Yeah. Immediately what comes to mind is, what am I going to do with all of this time?
Yeah.
But more seriously and to the point, you want, if you're from the point of view of enrichment, a place to start would just be, what was my child most recently learning about in history, or maybe even through the course of a year? I think that would be a great way to connect with a classroom teacher as a way of sending off, we're thinking about doing some things over the summer. What were some highlights from the year that maybe you would think would be worthwhile to tie into what we're doing with my children? You might even ask the classroom teacher, are there things specifically in reference to history that you didn't get into that you were wanting to? And that might be an area to target. I would want to know what's available to me locally, to save you some of the burden of having to plan a lot of activities, just to become aware of, in terms of museums, local parks, state parks, anything within the radius of about an hour, you could do reasonably within a day or a half a day, and just compile that list. Because if you're scrambling for something to do, that could be a place where you go and look, and you can find something that can maybe fill a spot. I would also be thinking about, what are some memories that I would want my children to take away from the summer, and can we plan a historical experience that could tie into a personal formation memory for them? The last thing is, maybe, are there other families that, if we're thinking about doing a trip, especially one that's locally, that we could partner with, maybe some children who are in the same grade level, some friendships there, and we could include them as a part of this learning experience together.
So on that planning note, are there particular sorts of family trips or friend trips, as you point out, that really help bring history to life?
I would say anything, for the sake of ease and the ability to do it immediately. I'm a big proponent of local history. Now, that's not necessarily going to be something that ties into a school sequence curriculum, depending upon where you live. But the museums that are going to be immediately available to a family, the libraries that are there, the parks that are there, they're going to speak to something that happened that was important, that was local. And going back to my point about maturing a young person, so much of that comes from the realization that, hey, there are other people that have come before me. They've done something, or they've done some things that are significant and worthwhile, maybe even worthy of imitation, and that they are worthy of some kind of respect and admiration. So I would say immediately that's something very easy to do. If you have the opportunity and the availability to do a larger trip, some of these historic road trips are just an absolute blast, especially if you're on the East Coast, where sites are closer together. There's an organization called the Journey Through Hallowed Ground that has an itinerary and roadmap for you if you wanted to go from Gettysburg. I think they go from Gettysburg all the way to Mount Vernon in Virginia. And man, what a wonderful thing it would be to do something like that. So those are examples of different kinds of trips that could be tied into historical learning.
And if you're going to make a trip like that, you're going to have some windshield time with the kids. Are there perhaps any good audio resources, podcasts, dramatized history programs that would make for good family listening on road trips?
Sure, there's plenty of those. Aside from recommending specific titles, I would take that back to speaking with a classroom teacher, researching what's been talked about topically in the student's academic year, and then taking them on a research trip to the local library. The local library is a wonderful resource for all things during the summer. In this case, they're going to have audiobooks. Those are going to be free to check out. You can download typically to an app on your phone. And so you can curate a list of audiobooks, maybe podcasts, but I would prefer audiobooks just because a lot of times there's going to be a dramatization to the reading as opposed to a conversation. And so depending upon the developmental level of your child, the dramatization with with tone and feeling is probably an easier listen than a podcast. So that's how I would approach that aspect. But certainly, I think all of us who are a little bit older remember taking family road trips and there being something that was played over the car speakers that everyone, whether they wanted to or not, was going to listen to.
A captive audience.
That's right. And there may be some part of that that's burdensome to the kids, but with enough time, they're going to look upon that very fondly. That was certainly my experience.
Yeah. Bryce Horswell with us. He's teacher support lead for Hillsdale College's K-12 Education office. I just want to go back just a little, talking about teachers and perhaps leaving parents with information about what has been studied and what perhaps just hadn't been studied or didn't have enough time to get to. I know plenty of teachers do a really good job about this. My kids' teachers do, at the end of the year, here's what we've been doing. Is that something that perhaps a teacher should prioritize or at least try to make sure that there's a little note that goes home that says, hey, here's some stuff we've been doing. If you want to do something for the summer, here are some possibilities?
Sure. I want to be careful because teachers, they do a lot. And our teachers, one of the things that we prize about the academic program at Hillsdale College is that it's content rich. There's a lot there. And so I want to be careful about saying that this is an expectation that you should have, that your teachers gives you action items to do over the summer. I prefer much more to frame it as here's a polite request or interaction that you can have with your classroom teacher, a way to connect with him or her about ideas for the summer. Maybe even asking the teacher, if they're a person who has a background in history or an interest in it, what do you enjoy? What's something that's been inspirational to you that you think might be of benefit to my child? Making the interaction there being more one of collaboration rather than here's this list of tasks that I, the teacher, am giving to you, the parent.
Yeah. More ideas, topics, and again, things that perhaps have been focused on in the classroom that
That's right.
Students might be interested or intrigued about. Yeah.
Sure.
Summer's a great time to spend time with family, intentionally so. That means there could be some interesting stories there. Students who might have family heritage to explore, family tradition to explore, are those good opportunities for history instruction over the summer?
Oh, definitely. Yeah. And there's several different ways of doing that. So you can talk about living history or oral history, and that's just simply sitting down and talking to someone. So an idea might be, if grandparents are around and nearby, to invite them over and say to your child, this would be a great assignment for children, maybe 7 to 12, or certainly teenagers, but 7 to 12, they just have such a wonderful natural enthusiasm and curiosity for learning, and have them interview their grandparent, prepare some questions ahead of time. And if everyone's okay with it, talk to them about what was it like growing up where you were? What was your experience of going to school like, of your first friends, and really forming a better understanding of that? That would be awesome. Another idea, when we were thinking now a lot of times about researching our family heritage, we think about that as an online database project, maybe going to one of the well-known online websites. And I would actually encourage, before going to that step, which you certainly can do, again, going to a local library or historical society, especially if your family's been in the area or where your family has been in an area for a period of time. Those are wonderful resources. And one of the earliest functions of a library was actually to keep track of genealogical information. So go there, see what's there. That would be on if it's a rainy summer day, take your kids down.
Maybe it's 105 too.
That's right, exactly. And you need a reason to stay inside. Hey, we're going to go check out. And librarians, they're wonderful people, and they love being asked about research because that's what they are trained to do. It's not so much to catalog books and to index them, but it's to help people locate resources and to organize them.
I don't want to do your job here, but when I was a kid, if you don't have grandparents nearby or can't make that connection, my parents had us go to the local retirement community, and they set it up in advance. We had a phone calls, people who are willing or want to tell their stories. And I was probably 10 or 11 or 12 years old, and went and talked to this 90-some-year-old woman about, again, what it was like when she was growing up, where she was growing up, how things have changed in her lifespan. It was an incredibly interesting conversation. And and then I wrote a little report about it. It was neat.
That's wonderful. Yeah. I would say that that's a wonderful thing to do.
All right, so good. I've asked this for other subjects as well. So other possibilities over the summer to better link subjects, meaning history and art, history and music, history and literature over these summer months.
Certainly. And this is where I said towards the beginning of our talk here, create a list of what's available to you in terms of library, museum, parks. From that, you're going to be made aware of opportunities and events. And so to me, the tie-in for those sorts of things, particularly for a music, most communities are going to have a summer concert series. And a lot of them, what's going to be played there is classical, traditional music. Maybe classical or Americana.
Or public domain type stuff
right.
too.
There's going to be a historic element to that. So if there are those sorts of events, something to do might be just a very quick amount of research with your child before going. Maybe you create your own program for them, or they help you create the program and say, here's the song that's going to be played and the composer or the writer and the reason, some of the themes within it. Giving them those hooks for understanding what is going to be played will help them even enjoy the music more. I keep going back to libraries. They're going to have, a lot of them, a community bulletin board, and on there are going to be notices of events. There's certainly going to be things that could tie into, again, music, plays, another aspect of the fine arts where there's an immediate historical connection. A lot of art teachers who teach in schools, they're going to do summer camps, or a school might offer an arts summer camp. And if that's of interest to you and you want to sign your child up for that sort of thing, learn about what is going to be taught in terms of artistic techniques. And again, that could be a short research type thing of, hey, we're going to research together who this artist was. For any of these sorts of enrichment drives in these different domains, coming alongside your student, engaging in just a quick research together. Maybe that's just as simple as an index search that then becomes a short trip to the library. That's a very simple but fruitful way to have that kind of engagement. If you're a parent, you don't want these things to feel like tasks or assignments necessarily. It's the summer months, right? So are there practical ways or tips for parents to encourage the wonder, delight, fun, curiosity in their I was going to say students, in their children over the course of the summer? Sure. Certainly. Yeah. There is, I think with all of these, we're wanting to make sure that it's clear that these are not additional things to be done. And if they're not done, that means that you're not doing enough. That would be a really poor message to send out there. The easiest thing to do is really to bring a book to your child and either to have them read it or to read it with them. I think for younger elementary students, taking them to the library, finding the history section, even letting them choose one. They love choosing their own thing. And then so a way that I would spin that is, okay, you get to choose your one book, and then maybe I choose one for the purpose of quality control. And then we're going to go to a park and have maybe a little picnic. And now we're going to read your book. So for a child up to the age of maybe 7, I think that would be a great opportunity. For more of the middle age children, 7 to 12, I remember these reading challenges, maybe you do too, from the 90s when I was that age, of like the Book It program. You gotta get that pizza, man. That's right. Get your personal pepperoni pizza from Pizza Hut. So do maybe a facsimile of that. And so challenge your children to read. Children of that age, they love competition, especially competition in the area of, do I measure up? Am I on my way to becoming a grown-up? That's really important to them. And maybe you include in the books, not just any books, because that's how Book It was. Any book qualifies to the number that you read for your goal. But you put a few on there that you yourself enjoyed when you were their age. And maybe those relate to history. For the purpose of our conversation, that would be ideal. They all don't have to. But that would be really cool. And on the heels of that, maybe even have a conversation with them about, did you enjoy the book? Hopefully they did. And if so, why? And then here are the reasons why I enjoyed it. and having a conversation with that. And then maybe if you want to return the favor, allow them to choose a book and you read that together, maybe not at the same time, but you could read it independently. And so to me, if there's looking at that family calendar and we're talking about trips and events and maybe another camp, and your reaction is like, are you kidding? There's no possible way to accommodate that with summer sports and the many other things that a family has going on, their own vacations. Just finding a few ways to bring books into the picture, making a short special trip to a park or a trip together is a way to make it happen and to happen pretty simply.
Bryce Horswell is Teacher Support Lead for Hillsdale College's K-12 Education Office, talking today about a classical summer and supporting history instruction. Bryce, thanks so much for joining us here on the Hillsdale College K-12 Classical Education Podcast.
Great, thank you.
I'm Scot Bertram. We invite you to like us on Facebook. Search for Hillsdale College K-12 Classical Education. You also can follow us on Instagram at Hillsdale_K-12. That's Hillsdale_K-12 on Instagram. Thank you for listening to the Hillsdale College K-12 Classical Education Podcast, part of the Hillsdale College Podcast Network. More at podcast.hillsdale.edu or wherever you get your audio.